Hey guys, welcome back to Woods Trading Fishing. I'm Preston, and today's video is about location and timing. So this is our third beginner bass fishing video specific to that, and this is a Q&A just like the other ones. So we've got 5 questions here specific about location and timing. So if you're just getting into bass fishing or fishing in general, then these videos are for you. So first question, what's the best time of day to fish? So right now, with it being as hot as it is, early morning or late in the evening or at night are the best times to fish. So anytime that's not, the hottest part of the day, because usually if it's the hottest part of the day, no matter what fish you're fishing for, they can be very hard to catch. So just like us, they don't want to, if it's very hot outside, they don't want to be super active. I mean, just like if you were going outside to, play basketball or pickleball or whatever, you don't want to be super active. You may be active for a little bit and then just want to quit. So the fish are going to be they're just going to sit and, usually where the most oxygen is at in the water. And right now with it hot, the water temp's probably 90, close to 90 degrees, sometimes even more. And so like at Gunnersville, I saw 87 the other day. The time before that, I saw 90 degree water temp. And then I heard Smith was 92. So, I mean, that's like almost as hot as it is outside. So when the water temp's that hot, the fish are either gonna go deep or they're gonna go in shallow shade. So anywhere that there's shade is going to be where more oxygen, or heavy cover like grass, will produce oxygen in the water. So, so with all that being said, morning time is usually my favorite. If you don't like waking up super early, like I said, go right before, the last couple hours before dark or after dark can be good as well. Especially, bass fishing, me being a bass fisherman, night fishing is really good. And, you can go back and look at some of our videos. We've actually talked about night fishing for bass specifically. But, like I said, you can catch catfish at night. It's really good as well. So, just started carrying catfish stuff here as well recently. So, second question, how do I know where to fish on a lake or river? We'll also throw a pond in there as well. So if you have a pond that you fish, usually, if you only fish from the bank, you don't have a boat, or maybe you have a canoe or kayak that you go out in, I would go to the deepest part of the pond where, like I said, where that better, beneath that thermocline where the more oxygen is at, that's where the fish are going to be. Or maybe there's docks on your pond, or grass or anything like that. Just those shallow flats where there's really nothing for the fish to relate to, that can be really hard to catch fish around. So for lake or rivers, if you're going to a lake, if you have a boat, I would find those places that, maybe those steep drop-offs. Like I said, those shallow, flat areas, the fish are not going to be around those as much. They're going to be somewhere where, if there is a shallow spot, it needs to have deep water nearby. So, like at Gunnersville, there's a lot of ledges where it's shallow and then drops off super quick. Usually those fish are going to sit near that drop off, because when it's hot, they're going to move off, and then when they want to come up and feed, they'll move up shallower to feed on the bait fish and whatnot. So usually look for those places where the steep drop offs are, or like I said, those places where there's shade. Also, current is a big factor too. So if you fish a river, go in the place where there's more current, usually up the river where it's narrower, where that current is rushing harder, or if there's a dam, beneath the dam, a lot of times that current can be a place to just get bites and catch fish in a hurry when they're feeding, and they set up right on that, current seam where the current's rushing, and then there's a little bit of slack water, little current break is what I call it. So if the current's rushing and then it breaks into slack water, right there on that break is where they sit. But anywhere there's current nearby, like Tennessee River, if you're fishing ledges on the Tennessee River, offshore, down the lake, offshore ledges can be very good, especially the ones that sit right up against the current. So if there's a ledge right here that's dropping off, you want the current to be rushing through and hitting it. So wherever that current's hitting the place you're fishing the hardest, that's where the fish are gonna be sitting, where that current's hitting. So current is cooler water, it's constantly moving. The sun doesn't heat up the water where current is as fast as it does heating up, stagnant water. Stagnant water like Smith Lake, there's no current. Smith Lake, it warms up super quick in the summertime, which is why I like night fishing there in the summer, just because of how hot the water gets. So definitely, current is where you want to go. If there's no current, deep water nearby is definitely key. So third question, does the weather really affect the fishing? This time of year, 100% the weather affects the fishing. For example, last weekend I went to Guntersville, and it was a very stormy, windy day, and the fish were biting pretty early, but once the sun came out, it died. The fish just quit biting. So early in the morning, when that, if you have a storms nearby, be careful, don't get out during the storms. But if it's a day where storms are in the area, or maybe just cloudy days. Cloudy days are very good. Rainy days with not any lightning are very good as well. So if it's storming a lot, sometimes the fish may not want to be super active. If it's just pouring rain and storming, wavy conditions, can be very difficult to fish. So that does affect the fishing, especially finding the right area. So if the wind is just howling and it's blowing right into an area that you're fishing on the lake, that can be very hard, and it really because it's hard on boat positioning. So the wind blowing in an area can make it very hard to position your boat correctly and make the correct cast. The wind blowing your line, all that can affect the fishing. So a perfect day would be overcast conditions, slight wind, maybe 5 to 10 miles per hour is usually the perfect day of fishing. If it's sunny, bluebird skies, no wind whatsoever, especially in the summertime, those can be very tough days. Not to say that the fish won't bite, you just have to make sure you get out really early or really late, like I said. So weather, without a doubt, affects the fishing. So just gotta adjust accordingly, adjust your lures accordingly. If it's an overcast day, usually those are better for baits that you just throw out and wind in, or top water baits. Sometimes they come up on top water on those type days. If it's sunny days, usually the slower moving baits like a worm or a jig for bass fishing those are usually the days that are tougher, and you have to slowly drag your bait. So another question here is, how deep should I fish? So going back to the other questions, just depends on the time of year. Right now, like I said, deep is good, but you can still catch fish shallow if there's, like at Guntersville, there's a ton of grass. So catching fish in the grass, it can definitely be done this time of year. So, You can fish shallow over the top of heavy grass, like with a frog, or you can flip a big weight in the grass mats because there's shade underneath. So you can catch fish shallow this time of year, but you know, there are still a lot of fish out deep. So on your lake, I would try both, you know, just whichever one you're confident in. I would start out with what you're confident in doing. You know, if you're an offshore fisherman or you're more confident in fishing deeper, then I would do that. If you're like me and you know, maybe you fish a lot of ponds and shallow water, you like fishing by the bank, then that's what I would start out doing. So start out doing what you're confident in, and then you can branch off from there. So last question, what's the difference between fishing in freshwater and saltwater? So me being a freshwater fisherman, you know, that's mainly what I do is bass fish. You know, most of the time you're throwing a spinning or a bait casting setup. Usually the heaviest line that I'm gonna throw in freshwater for bass is gonna be about 20-pound test for me personally, or if I'm throwing braid, 50 to 60-pound braid, 65-pound braid. So the difference there, you're using lighter line in freshwater. For saltwater, you're catching fish that, you know, maybe a lot of obviously bigger fish like, you know, sharks and whatnot. Just the fish are bigger. Also, a lot of fish have sharp teeth, whereas bass they don't have as sharp as teeth, so you don't have to throw as heavy a line. In saltwater, you know, you may have to throw heavier line, depending on what you're fishing for. If you're fishing for sharks, I mean, you have to throw really heavy line. So, and then heavier rods as well. So, you know, we have a few like, you know, heavier rods that you can get away with fishing in saltwater. You know, we have a heavier reel that we actually carry, the Daiwa Saltist. It's a 6,000 size spinning reel. So it's, you know, a bigger reel like that can be, it's a must-have for fishing in saltwater for bigger fish. So really just upping your gear is the difference between freshwater and saltwater. You know, some reels, a cheaper reel may not hold up in saltwater as much. You know, it gets all the salt in it, and it can really wear down quickly. So if you like fishing saltwater a lot, or you're going down to the beach and fishing a lot this time of year, I would highly recommend getting something that lasts. So that's really the difference there, is just preparing for that. You know, that's the main difference as far as like gear goes. As far as like location, I mean, you know, depending on the species you're targeting in saltwater, like redfish act a lot like bass, so you can get away with throwing bass tackle for redfish. That's one thing, like when I do go saltwater fishing, that's one of my favorite fish to catch, because they set up in places that bass set up, and I love bass fish, obviously. So, you know, you can kind of compare the two, but there are differences in freshwater and saltwater. So definitely, you know, be prepared for that depending on the species that you're targeting. So, so that's the 5 questions today. If you have any other questions based on this video, or any questions at all, please feel free to comment. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching.
All right, now we gotta take some